All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Student Affairs Live, the weekly web show for student affairs professionals in higher education. I am your host, Heather Shea Gasser, broadcasting live from Michigan State University. Today, I am featuring a panel of guests from across the field of student affairs, talking about how one goes into entering and then building a career in this field. For those of you who are watching live today, please follow along by tweeting to our hashtag, higherlive.com. You can ask questions, you can make comments, and especially for those of you who are in the field, if you have things that you'd like to say to contribute to the conversation, that would be great. Thanks again to my friend Valerie Reska, who is monitoring our back channel today. Before we get on to the show, I need to recognize our sponsors. Student Affairs Live is a part of the Higher Ed Live network, where free webcasts allow viewers to share knowledge and participate in discussions around the most important issues in student affairs. You can tune in to Student Affairs Live with my co-host Tony Duty and me this fall every other Wednesday at 1 p.m. Higher Ed Live is also produced by M. Stoner, a marketing and communications firm that works with education institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. 2 never-before-released chapters from M. Stoner's books, Social Works and Follow the Leader, are now available for download as audio chapters. So we are tweeting out a link now where you can find these chapters and learn more about M. Stoner's helpful resources. Student Affairs Live is also exclusively sponsored by ACPA, College Student Educators International. ACPA's strategic partnership with Higher Ed Live calls attention to the pairing of innovative professional development delivery with the strength of a renowned professional association. Have you registered to attend ACPA's first convention out of the United States in Montreal, Quebec? Check out the great learning opportunities in Montreal by clicking on the link that we are tweeting out now. So on with today's show. The story about how I got into student affairs is actually pretty common. I was working, like many people, through undergraduate degrees when I discovered a whole other field while I was also an RA on campus. So several mentors helped me identify where to find information about graduate school, and 18 years, 5 universities later, here I am, a professional in student affairs. October is Careers in Student Affairs Month, and today's show will be discussing how one learns about this field, prepares for a career, and then how one's career might progress. We are gearing today's show towards undergraduates or recent grads who are considering this as a possible career path, and also those of us who work with undergrads or recent grads who are trying to figure out their next steps. And today's show in particular is dedicated to 2 students at MSU, Tyler and Joe, who I have recently had the Student Affairs Might Be the Career Path for You discussion. So I'm grateful to the 6 individuals who are joining me to talk about this topic today. Laurie Patton Davis is an associate professor in the Higher Education and Student Affairs program at Indiana University. Hi, Laurie.
Hi.
Kathy Guthrie is also an associate professor of higher education at Florida State University. Chris Mendell is the Dean of Students at the Columbus College of Art and Design. Hi, Chris.
Hi, everyone.
And Amanda Parkman is the Academic Skills Coordinator at the University of Arizona and a current graduate student at the U of A's Higher Education Master's Program. Hi, Amanda.
Hi.
And Kent Porterfield is the Vice President for Student Development at St. Louis University. Hi, Kent.
Hi there.
And last but not least, Ericka Thompson is the Associate Director of Residence Life at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota. Hi, Ericka.
Hello.
All right, thank you so much for being here, everyone. This is going to be a great show. I want to start today by asking you all to briefly share your story. How did you find this field, or did, as in my case, the field find you? So tell us a little bit about it. Kathy, I'm going to have you start today.
Absolutely. You know, my story starts off similar to what yours does, is that it really found me. I was going through undergraduate, like most others, really involved on campus, but also really involved in my discipline. I went to a small private liberal arts college outside of Chicago called North Central College in Naperville, Illinois, and I was really involved in finance and business. And it wasn't until my senior year that 3 separate student affairs professionals asked me, oh, so you're going into student affairs? And I had never really thought about it. So I did some more research. However, when graduation came, I entered the business field. And about 3 months into my position, I worked at the Chicago Board of Trade, I started questioning that decision. And at the same time, my old union board advisor encouraged me to apply for a position, a student activities position. And so luckily I had the opportunity of jumping on board at that institution and spent 9 years as a practitioner at 3 different institutions in student activities, leadership, and civic engagement. And now I'm entering my 10th year in the role of faculty.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kathy. Ericka, tell us a little bit about your path.
For me, I was an undergraduate student, in an education major, and thought for sure that I was going to be a teacher until I did my practicum and thought, I'm not so sure that this is for me. And then I thought I was going to go to law school and didn't get into law school. And so I had graduated, was somewhat involved in undergraduate in activities and things like that. But my way in was working with the summer program at the Bell and Blank Center at the University of Iowa. I ended up being a coordinator for their summer programs after having been an RA for them for 3 summers. And my peers in the office that summer were all folks in the student development program at the University of Iowa. And they said, I think this would be a really good fit for you. And by the summertime, it was a little too late for me to apply. But I did take Intro to Student Affairs as a non-degree student to see if I really wanted to pursue a master's, if that was going to be the best next step for me. And within the first 2 weeks of class, I felt like, oh my gosh, this field has all the values that I have. This is exactly what I want to do. It's education without having to be sort of the sage on the stage, someone at the front of the classroom giving the advice. It was a little more organic and felt really, really great for me. And so I went on and applied at the University of Iowa and completed my master's there. And I'm just starting my 9th year postgraduate and have worked in a couple of different areas, from student activities and leadership programs, and now in residence life. And it still feels like this great fit for me.
Awesome. Thanks, Ericka. Chris, tell us a little bit about how you came to this field.
Sure. Well, in my experience, education was always part of the plan. So I had always intended to be an educator, and I come from a family legacy of education. My mother is an educator, my grandmother, my great-grandmother. So I had it in my mind when I entered my undergraduate experience that I wanted to become an educator. That was never in question for me. Is everyone hearing me?
We're hearing you great. Can you move your camera up
Okay.
just a little so we can see more of your face?
Yeah, I'm having some technical issues today with my computer, so I'm on my iPhone. I'm making the best of it. So as an undergraduate student, I knew I wanted to be an educator, but I actually tried on many different sort of avenues for education. So I was an education major for a time. I settled on history, and I ended up, my first foray into graduate school was in a master's program in history. I spent about a year doing that, and I realized that the life of a researcher and academic wasn't exactly the right fit. It felt right, but not exactly right for me. And taking kind of heard about student affairs actually through my partner, who's now my wife, who was at the time at Miami University in Ohio pursuing a master's in school psychology. And she told me, you haven't been that happy in your master's program. There's this wonderful program here that seems to have all these values that are really in line with yours. I went down for a visit with the folks at Miami CSP, and I knew right then that this was the field for me. So that was the early 2000s. 15 years later, I'm still at it with fantastic colleagues and a wonderful career in student affairs, and couldn't be happier.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. I love it. Laurie.
I think my story reflects a lot of what we've heard. I was very involved as an undergraduate, involved in everything, and didn't know that student affairs existed. And so I graduated and went on to work for the St. Louis Regional Commerce and Growth Association doing public relations work, which is interesting because I'm quite the introvert. But I did that work for a while, and then ended up connecting with a friend from college who was actually pursuing his master's degree here at IU. And he, I can't remember how we connected, but he started telling me, you really should think about student affairs. And I'm like, what? What is that? And so he, started giving me information about different programs that I should consider. And I, started looking them up and got really interested and felt like, wow, this is really reflective of something that I'd be interested in. And so I explored and ended up in graduate school the following year.
Awesome. I love it. Amanda, tell us about your journey. You're still in a graduate program, so tell us how you got there.
But how I got here is very interesting. So I did my undergraduate in family studies and human development, and all through undergrad, I really thought I was going to become a child life specialist and work in the hospital. But then after graduation, I got a job here at Think Tank at the Academic Support Center as an office specialist. And being in that environment gave me time and opportunity to kind of reflect on what did I really value and what did I want to do in my life. And I reflected in my college career and thought about all the amazing experiences I had. I did New Start Summer Program, which is a bridge program into college. I was in TRIO. My first job was working with you, Heather, in off-campus housing and community student affairs, and then I transitioned into becoming a desk manager in residence life, and I was actively involved in Arizona Blue Chip program, which is a leadership program. So accumulation of all that and reflecting about how powerful college was for me and the experiences it gave to me. I studied abroad and had all these opportunities I never imagined. And I wanted to have the opportunity then to help other students, to help them with that transition, because I thought about how many people helped me along the way as well. And so once I realized that, I realized I wanted to go on, pursue a master's degree in higher education, and continue working in the field of student affairs.
Awesome. Yes, I remember working with you very well, Amanda. It's great. I'm so happy to see that you're in the field now. Kent, tell us a little bit about how you came in.
It's interesting that there's a lot of similarities in our stories, differences as well, but a lot of similarities. I think the field probably found me more than I found the field, but I also was I was a history major, and I was my interest was secondary education. I thought I was going to be a teacher, and then I had some wild aspirations that sometime down the road I might actually be a school administrator, and that was what my focus was. I was actually student teaching and not having a bad experience, but I was starting to have some real doubts about my career choice, and I knew that my family couldn't afford for me to change majors at that point in time in my career, and I was really stressed about what I was going to do, thinking that I might have made a mistake. And somebody that I really looked up to, who worked in student affairs at the university, said, have you ever thought about a career in higher education? And I'm not usually an impulsive person, but I have to tell you that I made that decision without thinking through it very carefully. And as a matter of fact, I enrolled in the graduate program at the institution where I did my undergraduate work, mostly because I was so naive. I didn't really know even how to conduct a search or to begin a process. I wasn't sure I could get admitted. I had a lot of thoughts going through my head at that point in time, but long story short, I was accepted into the program, and I started working in an assistantship, and the university hired a new senior student affairs officer, and she took an interest in me, and she pushed me. She helped connect me to other people in the field. She literally forced me to read articles and books with her and to talk about those, and because of her, 26 years later, I'm still here in the field.
That's great. Yeah, I also went to a master's degree at the same institution that I did my undergrad for similar reasons in some ways. So Chris, talk to us a little bit about how one might determine if student affairs is a good fit for them career-wise.
Absolutely. So we talk a lot in student affairs about values and about the values of the profession, and I realize now, 15 years later, that when I chose student affairs, I really didn't understand what those inherent values were of the profession. I was just drawn to the profession. After my master's program and learning more about the commonalities that those of us who are student affairs educators that we share, it really began to fall into place. So I think as an undergraduate student, the first thing is figuring out, well, what is it that you value? in your career and your life. And I realize now that working at colleges and universities, there aren't many universities that you find will teach or are challenging students to really investigate what are the values of the profession that they're planning to enter. Beyond the skills, the expertise that you need to be able to be successful in that area, what are some of the inherent principles or values that guide it? Is it about competition? Is it about success or doing good? And I think it can be hard sometimes for students to know their values if they don't know, if they haven't had that chance to explore what those are and also connect them to careers. So I think we're going to talk about the Next Gen conference that HCPA sponsors maybe a little bit later, which is one of the ways that I think as a undergraduate student you can begin to learn a little bit more about the profession of student affairs and what it values. You know, I really think that if you have a passion for lifelong learning, if you, as we've heard already now through some of the stories that have been shared, care about the whole person, have a bend towards, you know, ensuring that people that you are trying to help see you as a person that has that fundamental care for them, and that also that you are an educator, then student affairs might be the right field for you. So, you know, I think that it does take an understanding of your own values, and then it takes some exploration of those career fields really to make a good decision. Not all of us had a chance to do that. We kind of got into it in some other ways, but ideally that's the way it would happen.
So would you say there's a wrong reason for somebody to go into the field? What would you suggest are those potential wrong reasons?
I love that. Thank you. I love that question. It made me really think a lot. And believe it or not, I would say a wrong reason is because someone told you to. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes students are, and even in my case, there were mentors in my life that told me, you know, you really ought to consider this as a career. And you know, I did, but I didn't do it by taking the steps that I talked about earlier, which was really sort of reflecting deeply on my own values and what I wanted out of my career, and then doing that investigation of, well, what is a student affairs thing all about? Not just sort of assuming that because somebody told me that I was potentially good in this area, that made sense. The other part too is remembering that what you see as a student sometimes is not the full picture of what you know, a student affairs professional's day-to-day life might be. So oftentimes I'm in that position now as a mentor where the opportunities I get to talk with students, they're hearing a lot about some of the fantastic things that I get to do on a day-to-day basis. I probably don't have a chance to always share with them the full picture of the challenges that it takes to be a successful administrator in higher education. So, you know, internships, practical opportunities to really dig deeper, I think are good ways to know that you're making the right choice.
That's great. So, Laurie, on individual campuses, the division of student affairs may look really differently than what we're talking about broadly as the field of student affairs. As somebody who studies higher education and student development, you know, why is there this discrepancy sometimes between the organization and the larger field?
I think a lot of it has to deal with institutional type. So for those of you listening, you may know about functional areas, and there are a wide range of functional areas that might be residence life or student activities, student union board, Greek life. And so there, within the field, there are professionals that represent all of these different functional areas within student affairs. But when you get onto an individual campus, I think the type of campus might dictate the types of services that they offer. So at a place like Indiana University or these large research institutions, you might find a more decentralized model where there's a wide range of different functional areas within a student affairs division. And then on a smaller, liberal arts campus, you might find that a lot of those services are within, one area, or one person is doing multiple roles to fulfill the functions of a given area. I think the other thing to consider is that not every campus has every functional area. So some campuses don't have Greek life or Greek affairs. The student affairs divisions exist at community colleges, but you're less likely to see residence life at a 2-year institution. And so it's really about a campus and administrators making decisions about the services that most appropriately meet the needs of the students attending that campus.
Perfect. That sounds great. I think it's really important to kind of talk about what student affairs is and what it isn't, and sometimes looking at your own campus sometimes is a good example, but sometimes it's not. Ericka, Chris talked a little bit about some of the challenges. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. What are some of the benefits, and then what are some of the challenges that student affairs professionals face? Because I think sometimes we do this like sunshine and rainbows and it's happy all the time. But we don't always talk about some of the challenges that are a part of this field. So I thought you could talk about that today.
Yeah, I think, and I mentioned this kind of in my how I got into student affairs. I'm really grateful for the opportunity I had to take a class as a non-degree student and get a sense of, is this field going to be a good fit for me? And for me, and we've talked a little bit about values today too, that the values of this field very much fit the values at the core of who I am. And so this is a great way for me, and I know for others in this field, to be able to sort of live out our values and have integrity in that way, and that we feel so connected to the work we're doing because it fits with what we really believe in. And there are some amazing opportunities to have impact on students and on growth and to educate both in and out of the classroom in student affairs. And I think that that's definitely the sunshine and rainbows piece of things maybe, but those are also the things that when I'm working with newer professionals, have them think about too. Why did you get into this field, and how can you use those moments to feed you in some of the moments that aren't so great? Because student affairs, like any other field, work's not always going to be awesome. There are really tough things that we deal with, and there's a really broad range. I think there's institutional politics that sometimes can be really difficult to manage. Sometimes despite your best efforts in interviewing and trying to be intentional in your job search, you end up at an institution whose values don't quite align as much as you hoped they would with your own, and that can create some difficulties. I think some of the really real work that we do in working with students, because they are humans, can be really taxing. There are really tough moments where sometimes we lose students on our campuses, and we deal with that grief and that agony in some ways, and we work with students who are in severe mental health crises, and that is very, very difficult. We also get to see the really fun and exciting side of students, but because they are whole people, we see the ups and the downs. We don't talk about those downsides quite as much. And I would also say, especially as in some of our more entry-level positions, we get to see more of that from students. And a lot of those positions also require time outside of the 9 to 5, and so balance, sort of this ever elusive idea in student affairs is balance, and how do you figure that out? And Sue Caulfield posted on the Women in Student Affairs blog, actually over at NASPA today, about finding her 80%, and it really, really resonated with me in terms of how do you give 80% of yourself at work so that you can keep that 20% to continue to feed yourself. And that really resonated with me in this idea of how do you find energy to maintain yourself when there are some real life difficult things that we manage at our institutions.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree, and I think that that's a really important part of this conversation, because as we're trying to recruit people and get them excited about the career, I think we do need to be really honest. So thank you for that. And I agree, some of the most challenging periods of my time is specifically when I've lost students. So as we all are nodding. I want to shift gears a little bit and ask each of you what you maybe would have done differently early on in your career as you think now, reflecting back. And Amanda, I know you're in the middle of the beginning of your career. What would you wish you had done differently? Kathy, do you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. It's ironic when I think about this. I actually think I wish I was more engaged in scholarship. So as a faculty member now, I laugh that I say that, but when I was a new professional, I was really just focused on the practice and making more intentional time to really think about that theory to practice, and then also carving out that time to pursue those questions I had in research would really be something that I would go back and do more of early on, because I know that that's evolved throughout my career.
Awesome. Amanda?
So as Heather mentioned, I am still pretty early on in my career, but there's a lot of things that I know that I'm glad I've done so far to get me to where I am. And so one of the first things I would say is that I like that I've engaged in opportunities that have come my way. So if something's come my way, I didn't say, no, I don't think I could do it right now. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. The other thing is I've worked hard and I've taken initiative. So I've shown that I wanted to move up from working as an office specialist to being a learning specialist and now a coordinator. And that goes back to taking on opportunities, but also working hard and taking initiative. And the other is networking. It's so important in the field of student affairs to really build a strong network and get to know other people, other student affairs professionals.
Thanks, Amanda. Ericka?
Okay.
There you go.
I apologize. I was trying to tweet, of course. I wish I would have considered residence life, and graduate school me would want to smack me in the face, I think, because I absolutely said I will never, ever, ever go into residence life. I had no desire for that. I didn't want to live in. I didn't want to do any of those things. And then I had some life changes and thought I might want to be a dean someday, and thought, well, okay. And I took a job in residence life thinking, all right, maybe I'll just get this over with. And it completes me in a very cheesy way. I wish I would have considered it from the get-go, because it has been a transformational part of my experience.
Awesome. Chris?
Yeah, I think for me, I would have, in graduate school, chose my functional area or made a decision earlier. When I was in grad school, I did so many internships or practicum experiences, and I worked with every functional area under the sun, so career services and admissions and a little bit of residence life over a summer. But I really knew pretty early on that academic support and academic advising and learning support services, that was where I wanted to be. And instead of, I like to keep my options open, and I like to dip my toe in a lot of things, and I definitely think it's important to explore, but I didn't do that with a lot of intentionality. I did it just so that I could, kind of not rule anything out. And I think by doing that, I didn't get as rich of an experience maybe as I could have in graduate school, not on the learning theory side, but really on the practice side. I spread myself really thin. I never said no. And I think one of the things that I've learned as a professional is that there is some real value to saying to passing on some opportunities when you have some intentionality about where you're headed. So if I had to do it over again, I would declare something pretty soon and really go for it. So that's my advice.
Cool. Laurie?
I'm trying to think of something that I would have done different, but really there isn't anything. And that's not to say that every day along my career path in student affairs has been peachy, but I feel like everything has happened for a reason, and it's sort of all flowed together to get me to where I am at this point. If I could go back and do it over again, and I don't know that this opportunity was available when I was in graduate school, but if it was, I would have done it, and that is some sort of internship at an HBCU or another minority-serving institution to get a different perspective of what student affairs looks like and how it operates.
Great. Kent?
I think there's a lot of wisdom in what Laurie just said in terms of things happening, for a reason, and are sometimes trusting in that process. If I had to pick something, and it's hard because there's a lot of mistakes that I've made in my career, but I wish I had known more about graduate preparation programs when I made the decision that I made. And it's not that I think I had a bad experience necessarily, but I really wasn't well informed or thoughtful about that choice. I was reacting to life circumstances and to a lot of stress in my life, and I picked, in some respects, what was convenient. Usually, you can make some bad decisions that way. It worked out for me. If I had to point to anything else, I would say I stayed at the first institution that I worked at for a very long time. And while there are real benefits to that in terms of really being able to have an impact and being able to know your surroundings and really be able to contribute, there are also limitations to that. And sometimes I think that it would have been interesting to have made some other choices and for my career to have taken some other turns. But really, like Laurie said, really at the end of the day, I was really fortunate in that others took an interest, created opportunities. I can assure you that opportunities were afforded to me that I didn't earn, that folks made available to me, and there's some deep lessons in that, quite frankly, if you want to unpeel that a little bit. But the career path that I've chosen has worked for me, but it is not the path that I advise others to take. When I'm mentoring or advising, I urge them to make different kinds of choices.
Good. Yeah, I think moving around is a challenge, but also a good thing. It really does depend, I think. Kent, when I think about my career and some of the things I did early, I think it has to do with joining professional associations and making connections with people. This field is as much about that type of network as it is about the individual campus networks, and this is in general a pretty connected field. The further into it you get, you realize how small it really is. How did you go about forming those connections and getting involved at the national level?
Well, I agree with you that I think it does seem, and the older I get, the smaller the field seems, to be really honest with you. It's 7 degrees of separation. Everyone knows everyone else in some ways. I had a mentor. I mentioned earlier that the senior student affairs officer took an interest in me when I was a graduate student, and really introduced me to a lot of people in the field and coached me about how to participate in a professional association, and when I went to the convention, what kinds of things I should do and how I should spend my time. It's very interesting that the people she introduced me to were her friends and colleagues, but they became my friends and colleagues. And through them, I met other friends and colleagues. But I can tell you that for me, I think showing up, listening, observing, and making an effort, an honest effort to contribute in some way, and there are a variety of ways to do that, is the first step, really. I mean, virtually every kind of involvement that you can have in a professional association is a portal potentially to building new relationships and connections with other people. Every experience is a learning experience if our minds are open and our hearts are open to that. So whether you're volunteering for something or presenting a program or serving on a panel or self-nominating yourself for an elected position or making sure that somebody else nominates you, or even volunteering to be a part of a task force or a committee or any other activity like that, it's amazing what doors that may open for you. Things that don't have anything at all related to the subject matter, perhaps, but that create other opportunities. I think building networks is important, and it requires some intentionality. And I think you need to build, or at least I advise others, and I've certainly tried myself, to build multiple networks. So sometimes that's a peer group, almost like a cohort, people that you're experiencing something in common with. Other times it's folks who are doing work that you're aspiring to do, perhaps. For me, it was building relationships with faculty because I was interested in the scholarship of the field, and I really wanted to understand better how my practice and the practice that I might be able to influence could be shaped by scholarship in the field, and how I might be able to, in some ways, be a practitioner scholar in some way. So, those are things that I think about, and as much as anything, it's the relationships that are formed in a professional association that I think pay the greatest dividends over time. And the last thing I'd say about that is that networks need to reflect the complexity of the work that we do and the society that we serve. And that means that interacting with people who come from different backgrounds, have different experiences, identify differently socially and professionally, that's really important, I think, if you're going to be whole in this field and make the kind of contribution that I believe that most of us really want to try to make.
That's a great point. So when you go there, don't just find the people who are like you. Really branch out if you can and take risks, I guess. Amanda, we had a great question in advance of the show from Arcelis Figueroa. She asked about, besides attending the conferences, how else can you get involved in organizations? And I know you're the state president of Arizona, so I thought you could answer this.
Definitely. So that's one way that you can get involved with the national organization, is being involved in the state chapter. So for example, ACPA, we have Arizona State Chapter, and we have an executive board. And so the executive board puts on, one of the things that we do is a conference. So we have one coming up on October 27th, and it's a state conference for student affairs professionals in Arizona. In addition to that, we do things like brown bags, we do webinars, we do Twitter chats, we have a newsletter that goes out every month. So there's ways that you can be involved on the executive board and participate, but then also you can just be a member of the state chapter and engage with these different things like the conference, or maybe submit something to the newsletter, or attend the webinar, or attend the brown bag, or social events too, networking. We've talked about that in many of our answers, how important that is. And so we provide different events so you could network with other individuals in the state. So that's one of the ways that you can get involved with the national organization, in addition to attending the convention.
Awesome. So I know that a lot of professional associations have programs that are designed to introduce undergraduate students to the field through mentoring programs, or through placement programs, or through actual conferences on site. And ACPA offers the Next Gen Conference, and Kathy is the current co-chair. Chris is a past co-chair. Kathy, can you talk a little bit about what Next Gen is and what it'll offer those who are considering a career in student affairs?
Yes, absolutely. This is, Chris, thank you for the shout out earlier about Next Gen, because it's something that incredibly engaged and passionate about, especially when we're talking with, traditionally, Next Gen has been for strictly undergraduate students, and this year we've decided to expand the population because much as we've heard from other people is that all of our pathways are different, and so honoring these differences and how we enter into the profession. And so while we still will be offering curriculum for undergraduate students, we'll also be offering with Next Gen curriculum for master's students, and then also professionals with a bachelor's degree. And so definitely opening up the curriculum and having more options, kind of like the choose your own adventure. And so people can go and choose different topics that will interest them. But it is being held March 5th and 6th, which is starting the day before convention in Montreal. And it is connected with the core competencies. And so we're looking at the core competencies of our field, which we all know that there is a document, and hopefully if you don't, to check them out, and looking at what competencies we need and should be looking at in the profession. Just to give a little bit more, there is scholarships for undergraduate students. I just want to shout this out because sometimes when we look at it, we're like, oh, how can I make this happen? And the conference registration, so not only Next Gen, but actually the whole entire conference for undergraduate students is $125, which is incredible. So they can have it, starting March 5th all the way through closing session. But there are scholarships available, and if you get online on the ACPA, the 2016 conference website, you can see the deadline is November 9th, and so have a little bit of time, about a month, but definitely check it out. It's the curriculum. We have some great speakers and ways to engage with Next Gen alums, seasoned professionals, faculty, just to have some of these conversations that we're having here to explore whether student affairs is right for you, or even dig deeper into what functional area should I be going into, and having advice from a wide range of people.
Awesome. So one of the things that a lot of folks ask about is graduate programs, and so I thought just really quickly we'd go around and say if we went to graduate school, which institution we went to, and maybe a couple of words of why you chose that institution. So for example, I went to Colorado State University, shout out to CSU Sahi, and primarily why I went there was because I was familiar, because I was an undergrad there. Amanda, I assume your choice is somewhat similar, but...
Yes, exactly. So I am currently in the master program of higher education at the University of Arizona, and part of it was because I did do my undergrad here and familiar with the program, and the other is my family and friends were here, so my life was already here as well, so it was an easy decision for me.
Excellent. Ericka?
I went to the University of Iowa, go Hawks. And that was also my undergraduate institution. I did look at a couple of different places, but since that's where I took my class as a non-degree student and connected with the faculty, that's ultimately where I stayed.
Chris?
Great. I went to Miami University's Sahi program, and I chose the program because of the faculty, the core values, and the rigor of the program.
Those are good. Those are good reasons. All of us have good reasons. I'm just joking. Laurie.
I attended Bowling Green State University in Ohio, and I never thought I'd live in Ohio, but I did for 2 years. And I chose the program because of the experience I had during the interview days they had. And one thing we haven't mentioned, I guess, as far as getting into these programs is the assistantship process, and it just so happened that between Bowling Green and the other institutions that assistantship came through, it was the first one to come through, and it's a competitive process to get into a program, and so I took that one. It was in multicultural affairs, and so I was excited.
Awesome. Kent.
Well, I've already tipped my hand on this, haven't I? So I would say I did my master's work at Northwest Missouri State University, and obviously I mentioned earlier mostly familiarity and affordability in some respects. I was really concerned about being able to afford to get a graduate degree, and I also had no idea what I was doing in my life at that point in time. But my doctoral work was at the University of Missouri. And that was really about life circumstances. I was working full time in a position, and it's what I could make work as we were, raising a young family, and I had to make some choices that required some trade-offs. So it was a good program, and it was convenient, quite frankly.
Great, Kathy.
Yes, I did my master's at Illinois State University, and really chose that program. After looking at several programs, it had to do a lot with the assistantship. I literally made the pro and con list of each institution, and if I got the position there, I knew I would be going to Illinois State. But I also made an amazing connection with a faculty member there, Dr. Phyllis McCluskey-Titus, who is just passionate about this field. And every time you hear her talk about this field, it draws me in closer to what I'm doing in the purpose. And so definitely went there because of her. And then I did my PhD at the University of Illinois, and much like Kent, it was life circumstances. I was working full-time in the Division of Student Affairs and absolutely loved what I was doing, and felt that it was a great, I could learn about the theory and then see it in action when I was in my position. So that's where I got my PhD.
Great. So there are hundreds, actually, of programs, and I think there are more every year when I find out about them at the conference. And so as we look at all of the degree offerings across the country of those programs that specialize in student affairs or higher education broadly, what do you all think is the best way for our viewers to evaluate these programs? Ericka, do you want to start?
Yeah, I had no idea about assistantships or what any of that looked like before I went to grad school, and actually did not have an assistantship in my very first semester of graduate school. And I think taking into account all the things that we've talked about in terms of your life circumstances, or is there family you want to be close to. There's all different kinds of rankings of student affairs programs and of colleges. I'd be very critical of, or look at those with a critical eye and figure out what are they really ranking folks on. Is it about how much money people give, or is it actually about the educational experience? I would say talk to your mentors or the folks who have engaged in conversation with you about why you should go into student affairs. Those folks probably have an opinion on graduate programs. And I would say there are different kinds of programs too, and thinking about what's going to be a good fit for you. I was in a very counseling-based program, and that was a fantastic fit for me. It wasn't necessarily a great fit for all of my classmates. And there are also more administrative-focused programs out there that have a different focus. They're social justice-oriented programs, so really finding out what the core of the program is and what the curriculum is going to be like can be beneficial.
Great. Kathy, do you have thoughts too?
Yeah, I would just add, it's much like I feel we tell our undergraduate students when they walk on campus, they can feel it. And I think that if you're going to visiting days or assistantship interviews or talking with faculty, you can feel if it's a right fit or not. I think having those conversations and understanding whether, okay, this is practice, this program is more practice-based or it's more theory-based, or they really focus on that theory to practice. And so having those conversations, just in addition to everything that Ericka said, I think is definitely how you can look at all of it, because there are hundreds and they are popping up, and more we're seeing online programs. And so if you're not an online learner, if that's not one of your strengths, then thinking about, then maybe I shouldn't enroll in an online program. And we're starting to look at that at Florida State, and I've said that might not be what you want to do. You might not want to be an online learner. And so really thinking through how do you best learn when you're looking at programs as well.
Great. So I think
Heather,
as a faculty member,
Heather,
go
ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut in, but I want to add one more thing, which is that
For sure.
I didn't think about the fact that when you choose a graduate program, you're also choosing an entire institution, and the institution is a learning lab in essence when you're in a student affairs program. So what goes on at the institution for the undergraduate students and the way that the Division of Student Affairs at that school might be structured, or the community, is the place where you'll actually get to, in many cases, have some practical hands-on learning. So, taking a look at the kinds of things that school is doing can also help you to make a decision about where you want to complete your education.
Awesome. That's a great point. And I think as we look at institutions and how they work collaboratively between their program and their Division of Student Affairs and that assistantship process, and I think that's a really critical piece. So my guess is those of us who are on the call are all kind of biased that if you are going to go into this field, you should get a degree in order to be an effective professional. But we all know many folks who have worked in this field sometimes for decades that don't have a degree in student affairs or have a completely different master's degree altogether, an MBA, for example. Kathy, can you talk a little bit about this challenge, I guess, this discrepancy, this disagreement, and then also what kind of experience should we be gathering before we go to grad school if folks don't go immediately right after undergrad?
Absolutely. Right. It is the great debate. And I think that one of the beautiful parts about this profession is that we are able to create our own paths. And you're hearing this in everyone's story just on this panel. But if you talk to 100 people, you're going to hear 100 different pathways. And so I think that pathway is your story, and so you're able to create it. And so while I worked full-time before I did my master's, that was uniquely me. And so I would say that there are multiple ways that you can gain experience, whether that is as an undergrad, just starting to kind of look at the landscape and seeing what type of functional areas are there, or talking to mentors, even asking to shadow different people on campus, whether that's undergrad or if you're taking a few years off in between. Doing an internship. There are some programs that will definitely want individuals that are undergraduate, and so looking at internship opportunities. Also engaging in undergraduate research. I said that was something that I wish I was engaged in earlier. I would say, if there are opportunities to engage I know I try to mentor undergraduate students all the time in this piece, and so thinking about what does that mean for you? But there's, a whole wide range of ways that you can have these experiences besides working full-time in the field, and also going to programs like Next Gen, and that was really part of the conversation in opening up the population, because before it was like you were an undergraduate student to be a part of Next Gen, but understanding that there are people that are taking these gap years or have different pathways, and how can we open up the conversation to include them? I mean, especially as we're talking with our Canadian colleagues that don't have a lot of higher ed programs, and their pathway isn't necessarily undergraduate to graduate work.
That's a great point. So, Laurie, I think a couple people have mentioned this concept of theory to practice as kind of being central. This is a practical field. It's also an interdisciplinary field. As one of the authors of the book, Student Development Theories in Higher Education, which is about ready to come out with the 3rd edition. It's very exciting. Can you talk a little bit about what this means? Why is theory to practice so central to the work that we do in student affairs?
So student development is one of those cornerstones of the field, and as student affairs professionals, we believe that our role is to help in facilitating students' development while they're in college. And so the whole idea of theory to practice is about intentional, thoughtful practice that's informed by theory and research rather than on our own, I guess, informal theories about how we work with others. And that's not to say that theory and research are complete, but when we go simply based on our own feelings and thoughts and emotions, we're not self-correcting. Whereas research helps to back up practice and inform how the programs that we do and services we provide for students.
Awesome. So today's show is really about kind of all of us sharing our perspectives. If you all have been following along on Twitter, there's been a phenomenal conversation also happening there. To all of the professionals who have been tweeting out responses to the questions that we've been talking about, thank you very much. For those of you who have questions, definitely keep tweeting them in. We still have a few more minutes. I'm going to have each person on the call today talk a little bit about a final word of advice. What is one sentence of advice that you would like to offer those folks who are considering a career in student affairs? So we're gonna go with Kent first. You ended the last several, Kent, so you're gonna go first this time.
Okay. All right. So let's try this. I would say be active, not passive, in your career choices or your career decisions. Or you'll miss opportunities by not placing yourself with others and in spaces or circumstances where opportunities will find you. My grandfather always said when I was younger that opportunities are often disguised as hard work. I found that to be true. And I think that those who find opportunities are generally pretty intentional about where they place themselves.
That's great advice. Laurie?
I think a piece of advice I would give this particularly to folks who are not in undergrad, and we sort of mentioned this, but there are folks who have probably worked in the field and want to get a degree, or folks who have worked somewhere else and are doing a career change. And so I guess my first piece of advice is that it's never too late to get a master's degree in student affairs. And then also, while I certainly encourage exploration, I highly encourage saying no, because there's just no shortage of opportunities to get involved in a number of things related to the field. And so don't feel like you have to take on every opportunity that comes your way.
Great. Chris, what's one word of advice?
I would say trust your voice. And what I mean by that is that as a student affairs professional, you have to figure out who it is that you want to be in relation to the communities that you're going to serve. Figure out how you want to be as an educator, how you want to serve students, and be authentic. And make sure you're finding yourself in places that allow you to be your authentic self. that's always been important to me, and that's how I ended up where I am now, by making sure that whatever institution I chose to work, or however my path would lead, that I could be my authentic self. And that would be my advice to those entering the field.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Amanda.
So I would say you want to take advantage of professional development opportunities, because those development opportunities will help you explore what areas that you want to focus on. Where do you want your career to go, and building from that.
Great. Ericka.
I would say that, as I talked a little bit about earlier, this field has its challenges, and so in echoing of kind of finding your voice, recognizing if this kind of work is going to feed you, if it's going to fill you up and give you energy, then it's a great path to follow, because you're going to need to continue to find those ways to be fueled and fed by the work that you do.
Great. Finally, Kathy.
Yes, so a lot. I echo everything people are saying. The piece about being authentic self really resonates with me, and I really think a lot about that is how can we live with purpose. I think we're an amazing profession that we're able to talk with students every day so that they can find their personal best and bring their best selves forward. And so if that aligns with your values, then how do you make sure that you're able to bring your best self forward while helping others? So I think living with purpose and finding that authentic voice in the work that we do.
Wonderful. So thank you to all of you for giving your time today and sharing your knowledge with us and with all of the folks who are watching about what your career path has been and how you've gone about building a career. It's been really great talking with you. I would also like to thank our program sponsors for their support of Student Affairs Live, and just give you a little bit of a preview of what we have coming up the rest of this month and next month. In 2 weeks, my colleague Tony Duty, the incredible Tony Duty, will be hosting a show called No Talking Heads with the NODA president, the National Orientation Directors Association, I believe is what that is. President Beth Lindgren Clark, Matthew Ferguson, and Michelle Nightingale. They will be talking about high-impact new student orientation practices that more effectively challenge students in learning, which is exciting. And then Tony will also be having a show on October 28th with Dr. Greg Blimling, talking about his new book, Student Learning in College Residence Halls. And then in early November, I'll be back with Dr. Carney Strange and Dr. James Banning, who are authors of the new book, Designing for Learning. So we have lots of book authors coming up in the next month or so. You can receive reminders about these and all of the other shows on Higher Ed Live by subscribing to our newsletter. You can browse our archives at higheredlive.com, where all of our shows are available for free and to watch. And you can also subscribe to the iTunes podcast, which you can listen to past episodes while you commute. So my name is Heather Shea Gasser. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks again to my panelists, and make it a great week.
Thank you, Heather.